is basically on the introduction of strategic business reporting, SBR, right? We'll get to know about what exactly SBR is, how is it different from your FR studies and your FR paper, and how the examiner assesses you on the topics that you've learned, on the knowledge that you've gained, and how will we go about with the course. Okay. Now, first of all, as the name suggests, and as you know, that this is the advanced paper of F7, FR, as you know it, right? Financial reporting. Okay. How is it advanced? It's, the components of it, right? Number one, the standards. There are some standards that are not in your F7, which you will study over here entirely. There are some standards which you studied in F7 but were not tested to the extent, or they were not in some parts of the standard were not in the syllabus. For example, impairment of financial instruments, right? Or let's say hedging and stuff like this. It was not part of your F7 syllabus. You already you have studied the basics of that standard IFRS 9, but the advanced level of that standard, or the entire standard, in fact, I would say, will be in your SBR, right? Second thing, which is more important, is the examining structure. All right, these two things are basically where where a student finds difficulty, right? Because there are extra standards, obviously, like I said, and the examining structure is, it's 360-degree turn from your F7 studies, right? The examining structure plus the depth of assessment that the depth of knowledge that the examiner expects you to have when you're sitting in an SBR paper. That is why this paper is a bit difficult as compared to other papers, right? And that is why we see that a lot of students struggle with this paper, right? Now, if we look at the examining structure first, before moving on to the standards, the list of standards, I'll show you the list of standards, right? If you first look at the examining structure, you have two sections. You have section A and you have section B, right? Section A you have for 50 marks, and section B also for 50 marks. So that's 100 total. You guys know that the paper is for 3 hours and 15 minutes, right? Paper is for 3 hours and 15 minutes. Now, point is, what comes under section A, what is tested under section A, and what's tested under section B. Guys, remember one thing, when you're at a professional level, right? And this is something that I would like to clear right now before you start with your SBR studies or any other professional paper, as a matter of fact, be it AAA, ATX, AFM, APM, whatever it is, right? Professional level papers there's at this level, you never question whether it's a theory paper or a numerical paper. All right, it's mix of all the things. Number one. Number two, at this level, if you fail to, number one, get the right number, okay, that's one thing. Let's say you get the right answer, you get the right numerical answer, but you fail to explain it, you won't pass. Okay, so explanation at this level, at this stage, matters a lot. Okay, you might end up adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing correct, right? That would be, probably, you're good at math, you can do that. But if you fail to explain that number, right, that is where you will find difficulty in passing the paper. All right, so it's very important for you to be good with the words, right? I'm not saying that you have to be very fluent in your English or your writing or your typing skills, right? But the point is, yes, the numbers that you're presenting in front of the examiner, you should be able to explain that. Why? Let me tell you. Section A, the first question on section A will always be on consolidation, right? Which is basically your group accounts, okay? The second question will be from reporting and ethics. Now the bifurcation of marks, because it's consolidation tested wholly and solely in question number one. Obviously, you get consolidation questions, and you can get consolidation questions in section B as well, right? But question number one in section A is allocated to consolidation, right? So you might end up getting this question, and you certainly will end up getting this question for at least 30 marks, right? Remaining 20 for question two. There could be a bifurcation of 35 and 15 as well. Okay, this could also be one of the bifurcations. All right, but again, like I said, consolidation will be the major chunk of section A. Okay, does not mean that the examiner asks you to produce consolidated SOCI only, consolidated SOFP only, consolidated SOCF only, right? Yes, that could be one of the requirements, and that in most cases it is one of the requirements, right? But the numbers you're presenting, plus you sometimes get standards in this as well. That means standards, for example, IFRS 3, IFRS 10, IFRS 11, IS 28, right? Or let's say standards other than those that relate to consolidation or mergers and acquisitions, right? So you end up getting questions on these stands as well. These and this basically mainly includes explanation or discussions, right? Explanations, discussions, advice, right? So you have to understand, if you're not good with the words, you're good with the numbers, but you fail to explain those numbers, you will certainly fail the paper. That is for sure. Okay. So whatever number you're working with, you need to know how you got it, because when I'm teaching you that thing, right, if you, for example, understand, let's say, okay, fine, this plus this plus this, or this multiplied by this, okay, that's the procedure, okay, I'll get the number in the paper, that's all right. Okay, I can pass the paper like this. You cannot. You need to understand the logic behind it. That is when you will be able to explain the number. All right, you need to understand the concept behind it. That is when you will be able to explain in the exam whatever number you're getting. Okay, so that's one thing. The syllabus is not the same. I'll show you the syllabus in a bit. Okay. Now, uh, when it comes to section B, right? Reporting plus ethics is basically you get 2 professional marks in question number 2, right? Reporting plus ethics, you can get any standard within the reporting criteria for the reporting area, right? IS 38, IS 37, there are other SBR stands as well, right? And you will get ethical implications. Okay, so it will be a scenario which will have an ethical dilemma. All right. Now, when we look at section B, again, you'll have 2 questions. Each question will be worth 25 marks. All right. Each question will be worth 25 marks. Remember this. Okay. Remember one more thing that the examiner tells us is that in consolidation, in section number 1, consolidation, you cannot get more than 25 marks on calculation. All right. 25 marks max you will get in a calculation question. So the rest of it obviously is related to explanation. Okay. Now, when we say that 25 marks into 2 questions, right, this makes it 50. Now, those 2 questions relate to 2 things mainly: reporting plus ethics, right, and current issues. So it's a mix of reporting, current issues, and ethics. It's scenario based question. Okay. So what you have to understand over here is, again, like I said, if you're good with the words, you're able to explain. It does not mean that you won't get numbers. Yes, you will get numbers to work with. Yes, you will get some non-financial information to work with as well. But at this stage, you need to understand, if you're not good with the words, you will have a very difficult time in the paper at every professional level paper. Okay. So if, let's say, you lack this skill, obviously you will learn it during the course, and I'll obviously tell you some tips on how to improve by yourself as well. Okay. Now, Ahmed, at every level, in every paper, ethics is there, because you're a professional accountant now. Okay. So it's ethics all along. And when you take the lecture for double A, right, you're studying double A as well. Okay, so when you study double A, you'll get to know more about ethics. Why is it, it's one of the most important traits of an accountant, a professional accountant. Okay, now, um, when it comes to the syllabus, right, these are the standards that are tested at SBR level. So IAS 1, that's basic. IAS 2, IAS 7, IAS 8. You already know these standards except for IAS 19, which is new into SBR, right? You know these standards from your F7 studies. You know IAS 20, right? So you know all these standards from your F7 studies. You know IAS 21, right? You know IAS 23. You don't know IAS 24. That's new in SBR, right? IAS 27, you guys know, okay? IS 28, 32, 33, 34 is new in SBR. 36, 37, 38, 40, 41. You guys know all of these standards, right? IFRS 1 is new in SBR. IFRS 2 is new in SBR, right? IFRS 3, you know. IFRS 5, you know. IFRS 7, you know, right? So these are IFRS 8, for example, is a new standard. 9, both in SBR and F7. But like I told you, there's some aspect. And in fact, there's a major chunk of IFRS 9 that is not part of F7 syllabus, which we'll study over here. All right. Now, IFRS 11, 10, they're all new in SBR, right? IFRS 13, already studied in F7, and you will study it again in SBR. Does not mean that I won't teach you the F7 standards. I will teach you all the standards, by the way. Okay. So IFRS 15, yes. IFRS 16, yes. IFRS for SMEs is in SBR only, right? It's a very small chunk, and we look at it, right? In fact, there's some exclusions for SMEs. More importantly, right, when you look at the other statements, this is where your section B current issue comes from. Okay, this is the region. Plus, you might have other topics as well. For example, accounting for cryptocurrency, right? You have a technical article on your ACCA website, accounting for cryptocurrency. You guys probably heard of this term, cryptocurrency, before. You've heard of blockchain before, probably, right? Bitcoins and all of that. Okay, so we'll study that as well. This area is basically, like I said, for your current issues, right? Now, remember one thing. When I tell you that this small chunk, because obviously when you look at it, it's a pretty small chunk, right? This small chunk will get you the 25% in the paper. All right. So the point is, and in most cases I've seen, students are well prepared for the 75%, but not for the remaining 25%, which is this. Okay. And the 75% that they, let's say, they're prepared for, they're obviously, because it's a new paper, it's a new case, everything is new, right? And when you enter the paper, when you enter the exam scenario, right, you end up doing 50% of it right, or 70% of it right, or 80% of that right, and 25% of the paper you just neglect it, which is entirely wrong. Okay, you cannot do that. All right. So like I said, fair share to each area. Okay, 75% of the paper coming from the top half, yes, will take significant chunk of our time. The remaining 25%, we need to allocate time to this, and obviously, as part of the schedule, time has been allocated to this. Significant time has been allocated to this and its practice. Okay, now this is basically the outlay of the standards that are within your SBR course. There are some standards which are not part of ACCA. Okay, IS 26, IFRS 6, IFRS 4, IFRS 17, right? So all of these standards, they're not part of ACCA at all. Okay, now how will we go about it? Okay, how will we prepare for the exam? At SBR level, right, I tend to use this screen and my Excel, okay, and my Word documents to For example, let's say, right, events after the reporting period. Okay, so for example, this is how I'm gonna make sure that you guys have your, right. So at the end of it, you will get this document, right? Or you can take down the notes while you're taking the class, or when I'm doing it on Excel, you'll get the Excel sheet. All right. Most often I use Excel so that it's easy for you guys to get the notes, right? So whatever is written over here, you will get it. All right. After the class, or let's say if there's a student who wants it, you know, after 1 week or stuff like this, right? Accumulated notes, you will get it. All right. Once we're done with one topic, for example, this is IS-10, right? Once I'm done with IS-10 usually in the exam scenario, you get IS-37 along with IS-10. Okay. IS-37 is your provisions, contingent assets, and contingent liabilities, right? So in that case, once I'm done with one standard or two standards, what I usually do is I open up the kit and I start solving the kit with the students. All right. So that's my approach in every paper I teach, each and every paper, be it tax, reporting, audit, whatever it is. That's the approach, right? One topic, questions, topic, question, topic, question, right? Now, focus is that I'll first do the F7 standards, okay, and then I'll move towards SBR standards. Okay, why I want to do F7 standards first? Because those standards you've already studied. We'll quickly go through those standards. Does not mean that we, just have an overlook, on those standards. It means that we will look at them in detail. Plus, we'll do the SBR kit on those standards, and then we'll move on to the SBR standards, which are not part of F7 at all. Okay. And once we're done with the kit, obviously topic wise, what I suggest my students is to attend my revision course. And by the time they're, attending the revision course, you need to do the mock exams. Never, make sure that at this stage, even at, fundamental level, I don't suggest anyone writing while they're practicing or using a calculator while they're practicing. Why? Because you won't have access to these tools in the examination. All right. Even if you do, whatever you write, you won't be marked on it. All right. You use a calculator, you write it down, you won't be marked on it. Why? Because you have to type. Okay. It's an error where we type, we don't write. All right. So if you're practicing, even when I do the practice in the class, I use Excel, I use Word. I never use the pen. Okay. Why? Because it's useless now for our exams and for the future. It's useless. All right. So I always recommend my students to whatever mock you do, whatever practice you do, practice it on Word and Excel. Okay, if you don't know it, for example, you lack the skill of Excel or Word, let me know. I'll arrange a session for you where I'll teach you how to do it. Okay. Exactly. Okay, so all the papers have now become CBE. Okay, and what you need to understand is that typing and the calculation on Excel skills is very important. So the basic formulas equals to some, all these formulas, just basic formulas, because you're not allowed to work with the advanced formulas in the paper. All right. Now, last thing before we end the class, right? Before we move on to the question session, not in the class, before we move on to the question session, right? Yes, I don't know, sorry, what your name is, but I'll keep one session for that as well. Okay. As per ACCA, March 21 is the attempt that all the papers will become CBE, right? Um, yes, there are some regions where up till December, which is basically this attempt that has just passed, December 20. Even some of my students gave paper-based examinations because it wasn't CB right now. But up March 21, ACCA initially targeted that all the papers will become CBE. All right. Now, um, before I move on to the question session, just one last thing. right? uh, I recommend my students to take live classes. If you're, let's say, in an, if you're working late or something like that, obviously you'll get the recordings. But the point is that I recommend live classes because live classes, I tend to make them interactive. Okay, it's very important for me to students for the students to respond back when I say that you understand or not. All right, so it's very important for me because without that, I lose the motivation to teach. Honestly speaking, the motivation comes when I get the acceptance, the agreement of the student that okay, fine, we got what you said, we can move on. All right, because if I don't do that, it's like talking to myself. That's it. All right, so I don't like doing that. All right, so we will make the class interactive, and that's what I do. Right. So now, finally, any questions, guys? Do you guys have any questions regarding SBR, paper approach, anything, classes?
I have a question.
Yes.
With regards to this new CBE format,
Hmm.
so how things will be done? Do you give us a demo?
Yes.
SEC will give us a demo to how
Yes.
to perform the
Yes.
paper.
Yes.
Okay,
I'll
okay.
tell you exactly. Basically in a live class towards the end. Towards the end does not mean that entirely the end, right? By the way, I plan to finish the course by 22nd of Feb. All right. So 22nd of Feb is my target to finish the course, right? More or less 24th, not after that. Okay, not beyond that. 20. If obviously I'll be keeping some extra classes as well, right? If I feel that there's a deficit there, we need more classes, I'll keep extra classes, right? So the point is, um, we'll do. I'll obviously show you guys how to go about on an exam platform, right? And how to make sure that you are in the right area of the exam section at the right time. You understand? That's very important. How many mocks must be given to get confidence before exam? This is the question I feel is not right. Why? Because the way you get confidence to appear in an exam and to do good in an exam is when you have the required knowledge, right? If you, let's say, you accumulate all the knowledge during the classes, you're taking live classes, for example, right? You accumulate all the knowledge, and the accumulation is on a piece of paper. That means you register your notes or on a Word or Excel, and you're not revising it, you're not refreshing it in your mind. That information, that accumulation is useless. Trust me, it's useless. And in the exam, for sure, you will panic. Okay. So, what you need to do is, like I said, and I'll tell you during the course as well, once I'm done with one standard and move on to the next standard after the practice session, I would want you to revise all the previous standards that you've done. Okay, because accumulation of knowledge on a piece of paper just in the form of notes is useless. You cannot take the notes in an exam. Okay, you need to accumulate in your mind and you need to refresh it every time. You need to press the refresh button every time. Okay, that is when you will, that is how you'll get the confidence to appear in the exam and ace it. All right, one thing. Second, mocks is just a way of mocks or practicing as a practices during the course, but there's some students who practice after the course as well, like after once the course is done, they tend to practice while they're revising, right? Don't leave a lot of questions at that time for yourself to practice. Attend the practice sessions when we're taking it, right? Number one. Number two, mocks are there just to make sure that you're exam ready, not to not to learn new knowledge, not to, in fact I would say, not to revise even. All right, you give the mocks when you're ready, and you just have to test yourself in an exam scenario. That is when you give the mocks. So if you're giving a mock, that means you're already confident about the exam. Okay, you understand what I'm saying, Goyal? If you are giving the mock, if you're planning to give the mock, you're already confident about the exam. That is when you enter a mock. You don't enter a mock just because, you know just to test yourself whether you know it or not, whether would you would be able to cater the new knowledge or not. That's not when you enter a mock exam. That's when you practice random questions from the kit and you revise from your notes. All right, anything else, guys?
I have a question, one more question.
Hmm.
With regards to those CBE sessions, So
Mhm.
the result will be like on the spot, or it will take time to get the result
No,
for
no,
that paper?
result obviously takes time. It takes, for example, the result this time is 18 Jan, right?
Hmm.
So even if for the CB question, CB, because the ones you're talking about are on-demand CBs, right? So that's a different
Okay.
scenario. That's for F1 to F4, where you get the result immediately.
Okay, got it.
Okay. Anything else? Any questions related to standards or syllabus or timings or whatever it is? Any
One
other?
more question, sorry.
No problem.
With
Anything.
regards to this that you just mentioned regarding that the 22nd of Feb will be the last class. So these
Last class
classes
is
include
basically it will be completion of the course, right? We
completion of
have
the
revision classes after that.
so revision classes will be after that, correct?
Yes, yes, exactly. Revision classes
Oh,
will be after the course, once you're done with the course. And by the way, guys, course means 100% of the syllabus and at least 80% of the kit. That is what course means. 20% of the kit, obviously, I'll give you as homework, or I leave some questions which are similar to the previous questions that we've already done in the class as a revision material for you guys. All right. So that is what course means. Course does not only mean what's in the IFRS. All right. That's just basic, right? So we have to practice the questions as well. That is very important.
So I have one more question, sir.
Yes. How many classes per week you're asking?
No, so what is the difference between SBR International and UK, and which one is better? Like,
Are you studying, like, are you within the UK jurisdiction? Or do you
no,
plan to go to UK anytime in the future, like near future, not after 10 years?
no,
No.
sir,
Okay,
not
then
sir.
you need to give international. Why? Because UK gap applies when you give the UK syllabus, right? FRS standards apply, right? So FRS 102, 105, those standards are separate means that those are additional requirements in addition to IFRS. All right. So it lengthens your course. You don't have to worry about that if you're not giving, like, if you're not planning to go to UK anytime soon. Okay. So you all, most, I guess, all of you will be registering for a SBR International only. Okay. So even if you're, because I remember I had some students from UK, and their requirement, their firm's requirement was to give SBR UK in order to get a promotion. All right. So that's a different scenario. At this stage, I would recommend giving SBR International only. SBR, AAA, all of these papers international, except for if you're giving ATX, that would be UK. 3 classes per week for now. For now. All right. After, I would say, mid Jan, I'll see the progress and I'll increase to 4 classes per week, or I'll increase the number of hours depending on the situation. All right. Anything else, guys?
no, sir.